So here's another post-election reaction. Another post-election reaction from Bezalel Smotrich. Here is the Israeli government official just announcing the future annexation of the West Bank. Here's Finance Minister of Israel, very excited to claim the West Bank territories for Israel.
בעזרת השם להוביל בהמשך החלטת ממשלה שקובעת שממשלת ישראל תפעל מול הנשיא החדש מול הממשל החדש, של הנשיא טראמפ, מול הקהילה הבינלאומית, להחלת...
We'll work with President Trump and the international community to apply Israeli sovereignty over Judea and Samaria. There you go.
הריבונות הישראלית ביהודה ושומרון, להכרה אמריקאית ובינלאומית, ולסיום הסכסוך הישראלי-ערבי במזרח התיכון. נתתי הנחיה למנהלת ההתיישבות במשרד הביטחון ולמינהל האזרחי להתחיל בעבודת מטה מקצועית ומקיפה ולהכין בפועל את התשתית הנדרשת להחלת הריבונות. שנת 2025 תהיה בעזרת השם שנת הריבונות ביהודה ושומרון.
There you go. The year 2025 will be the year of Israeli sovereignty in Judea and Samaria. Al Jazeera reports far-right Israeli minister orders preparations for West Bank annexation. Israel's far-right finance minister Bezalel Smotrich has ordered preparations for the annexation of the occupied West Bank ahead of U.S. President-elect Donald Trump taking office in January 2025. In a statement on Monday, Smotrich voiced his hope that the new administration in Washington will recognize Israel's push for sovereignty over the occupied territory. In addition to his finance portfolio, Smotrich, who himself lives in an illegal Israeli settlement, also holds a position within Israel's defense ministry where he oversees the administration of the occupied West Bank and its settlements. At a meeting of his far-right faction in the Israeli parliament, or Knesset, on Monday, Smotrich welcomed Trump's U.S. presidential election victory over Kamala Harris and said he had instructed the Defense Ministry's Settlement Directorate and Civil Administration to lay the groundwork for annexation. So they're very happy with the election results. I have directed the start of professional work to prepare the necessary infrastructure to apply Israeli sovereignty over Judea and Samaria, he said. I have no doubt that President Trump, who showed courage and determination in his decisions during his first term, will support the state of Israel in this move, he added. Well, all signs point to, yes, he's going to have their full support. Smotrich said there is broad agreement within Israel's ruling coalition for the move and regarding opposition against the formation of a Palestinian state. The only way to remove this danger from the agenda is to apply Israeli sovereignty over the settlements in Judea and Samaria, he declared. So there you have it, the plan to just claim the West Bank. And who's going to stop them?
Always was.
You think Mike Huckabee's going to stop them?
Yeah.
New ambassador to Israel? You think Donald Trump's going to stop them? Marco Rubio? Yeah.
Yeah, you've got Israeli soldiers wearing Greater Israel patches that show Israel as a country that encompasses Gaza and the West Bank. This was always the plan. And you're going to say, well, Trump's making it worse. Yeah, under the Biden administration, they would have done this, and the Biden administration would have said, tisk, tisk.
Right.
Under Trump, they're going to say, yeah, okay, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Same effect. The rhetoric will be different.
All right, so they're going to claim the West Bank for themselves. What about Gaza? Well, here's what about Gaza. Palestinians will not be allowed to return to homes in northern Gaza, says IDF. Israeli ground forces are getting closer to the complete evacuation of northern Gaza, and residents will not be allowed to return home, the IDF has said, in what appears to be the first official acknowledgement from Israel. It is systematically removing Palestinians from the area.
Shocker.
Yep. In a media briefing on Tuesday night, the IDF Brigadier General Itzik Cohen told Israeli reporters that since troops had been forced to enter some areas twice, such as Jabalia camp, there is no intention of allowing the residents of the northern Gaza Strip to return to their homes. Just read that again. Since troops have been forced to enter some areas twice, there is no intention of allowing the residents of the northern Gaza Strip to return home. What did they say? They said this was going to be another Nakba. They said that the day of.
Yep.
They said that in October of last year.
Yep.
And here you are, confirmation. He added that humanitarian aid would be allowed to regularly enter the south of the territory, but not the north.
I mean, this is going to be interesting. Do the Democrats continue to serve Zionists like this? Because I would imagine that all the Zionists are going to run to Trump.
Yeah.
Like, why deal with people who have to pretend that there's some kind of a moral crime going on here?
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. That is a good question. That is uncertain. I'll start that sentence over. He added that humanitarian aid would be allowed to regularly enter the south of the territory, but not the north, since there are no more civilians left. Now, there are hundreds of thousands of people in the north. They don't they're not making a distinction anymore between civilians and combatants. They've said that. They've announced that a few weeks ago.
Reality was what they say it is.
Exactly. International humanitarian law experts have said that such actions would amount to the war crimes of forcible transfer and the use of food as a weapon. On Thursday, an IDF spokesperson said Brigadier General Cohen's comments had been taken out of context during a discussion about Jabalia and did not reflect the IDF's objectives and values. The spokesperson did not reflect their values. The spokesperson also said that the briefing had been on background and that the brigadier general should not have been quoted in Hebrew media reports that emerged. The Israeli army and government have repeatedly denied trying to force the remaining population of northern Gaza to flee to the relative safety of the south during a month-long renewed offensive and tightened siege. Residents still clinging on in the north have said the new operation has created the worst conditions of the war to date. Israel said the push is necessary to combat regrouped Hamas cells. So, obviously, the fighting began in the north and then went to the south, and now you're up to the north. I mean, it's just, it's very obvious that the goal here is the purging of this land and to kill everyone who's in their way. That is just very, very obvious. It's been obvious for a very long time. Rights groups and aid agencies have alleged that despite the denials, Israel appears to be carrying out a version of the so-called General's Plan, which we covered a few weeks ago as well, which proposes giving civilians a deadline to leave and then treating anyone who remains as a combatant. Yes, that's why earlier in the article they're quoted as saying, we're not going to let food in for civilians because as far as we're concerned, there are no civilians left.
There are none, right.
That does not mean there's no people left. It means everyone there we are treating as a combatant, which means we're not going to give them aid, because at that point it's not humanitarian aid. It is unclear how many people remain in northern Gaza. Last month, the UN estimated there were about 400,000 civilians unable or unwilling to follow Israeli evacuation orders. On Wednesday, social media footage showed waves of several dozen displaced people carrying children and rucksacks and walking south through flattened areas of Gaza City. Many had not eaten in days. Huda Abu Laila told the Associated Press, "We came barefoot. We have no sandals, no clothes, nothing. We have no money. There is no food or drink," she said. Israel cut the territory in two earlier this year by creating what it calls the Netzarim Corridor, separating what was once the densely populated Gaza City from the rest of the Strip. In Tuesday's briefing, Cohen also confirmed that northern Gaza has now been split again to divide Gaza City from the more rural north. Resettling or permanently reoccupying Gaza is not official Israeli policy, but senior Israeli defense officials recently told the Israeli daily Haaretz that with no other alternatives on the table, the government is aiming to annex large parts of the territory. So there you have it. News breaks, relatively close to each other. A purging of northern Gaza, where now they're saying, well, you're not allowed back. Well, if they're not allowed back, what becomes of that land? Nothing? No, they're going to claim that land. And then you have the finance minister saying, we have plans for the West Bank. That's their Project 2025, is just claiming the West Bank. And they're not going to be stopped. Donald Trump is not going to stop them. Look at who he's appointing. Look at who he's appointing to sort of put a bookend on this live stream. Who's going to stop him? The only way they could be stopped is if they are persuaded by their own base not to do it. And I would put the odds of that at around 1 in 1,000, if I'm being honest with you.
Yeah.
About a tenth of 1%.
They've already got the plans for Kushner Towers drawn up.
Yeah. Apparently Kushner's not going to be on the team this year, though. Apparently they have boxed Kushner out. Yeah.
Have they? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, this was what this isn't what they've planned since October 7th. This is what they've planned since the 19th century. This is what they more overtly planned since 1948. They have played a very long game, taking every opportunity they can to shrink the territory in which Palestinians can live safely. And now this is their final push. And they want to be us, basically. Yeah, we used to have natives. Yeah.
Right.
Too bad for them.
Yep.
Let's have a little fire ceremony.
Yep.
Oh, let's put up a plaque. That's what they say at the end of Tentora. It's very interesting. Anyone who hasn't seen that documentary should see it. You have some old people who took part in the Nakba, Israelis, and they talk about the crimes that were committed, and you have some old women saying, yeah, we should put up a memorial. And some of them are saying, but no, basically saying we can't acknowledge that. And they were saying, well, you go to Germany, they have memorials, like openly admitting this is the dynamic. Well, they have them. Why can't we have them? We can have memorials. If they're being honest, they know, especially the older ones, what they did. They committed genocide and ethnic cleansing. And now they have decided that they're willing to take on this moral stain in order to have this Jewish state. And you know what? We'll talk about it later. We'll make very sympathetic movies about the Palestinians in 100 years.
Please clap.